name's David Hogue. I'm the head of the archives. This is based on a group of 36 glass plate negatives taken around 1903 and 1904 by the photographer Xunling, who was an amateur photographer in the court of the Empress Dowager Cixi. Cixi was the de facto head of state from around the 1860s up through her death in 1908. She was an extraordinarily powerful woman within the Manchu court. She brought in a Western-trained photographer who was also Manchu nobility, and this is the result. But it really does show the Empress Dowager alone on the imperial throne with imperial trappings, with the intention of showing her legitimacy as, first of all, as a female ruler. She was always questioned in terms of whether she was really fit to rule. But you see her with her official title up here, which is this very long Buddhist title, which starts out as the Great Qing Grand Empress Dowager, but then all of her wonderful qualities. Here she is wearing a dragon robe, which was something of the uniform of the Qing court. The dragon robe was a symbol of imperial legitimacy. Only the central imperial family, the emperor and his closest family, were allowed, for example, to wear 9 dragons and then 12 symbols. And you can actually see some of the imperial symbols on here. This really is her sign of legitimacy. These would have been extremely colorful, but these gorgeous butterflies, these gold embroidered longevity symbols, which are big and garish and bright, these would probably have been using Western dyes, so you could imagine these would have been bright purple or bright green and extremely vivid. And you also see that she's wearing the famous fingernail covers, which are usually gold with bits of jade and jewels in them, so it would have been quite a scene. As well as these great shoes. Now, I made a comment with the curator at the time was to say, oh, look at those bound feet, which got me in big trouble. These are Manchus. They do not have bound feet. In fact, Cixi is quite famous as outlawing bound feet and near the end of her reign. They wore the Manchu horsehoof shoes. They were basically, her shoes were up here, and then they had these wonderful platforms which were covered with jewels and hanging ropes of pearls and bells and such like that. So these would have been very striking, and in fact, the Manchus had to walk in a special gait just to be able to walk on these stilts. So, and here we are looking at foreign audiences. By this time, Beijing was occupied by Western nations. They had escaped during the Boxer Rebellion to the interior of China, but they returned in 1902. At that time, they hit upon the idea of not inviting the men of the Beijing diplomatic community, who were still extremely bitter because they were being shot at constantly during the summer, during the Boxer Rebellion, but inviting the court ladies. It was a great success. They came to the court. They heard these wonderful speeches by the Empress Dowager promising eternal friendship. They had tea, they received jades and brocades and fur gifts and such like that. They came back and raved about what a lovely woman this was. Sarah Pai Conger in particular wrote a number of newspaper articles, and it was a great public relations play. You think of the Empress Dowager, who was blamed for usurping the throne, for killing foreigners and Chinese, and for all of China's woes at this time, having the temerity to dress herself up as the bodhisattva of compassion. What an inappropriate comparison. However, in the context of the Qing court traditions, there is a very strong tradition going back through the Qianlong Emperor and before of taking on the attributes of a bodhisattva who you most want to emulate. It is not a comparison, it is an aspiration. Here she's just simply using photography to continue that tradition. Cixi herself was a tremendous fan of Chinese theater. She commissioned a number of writings of theater, of Chinese opera, and rewritings of traditional stories. She had a troupe of eunuch performers in her court who put on as from what I've read, some extremely elaborate and impressive theatrical stagings and operas, and she actually paid outside performers to come in and perform, and also to teach her eunuch troupe about performing. She was very immersed in the theater, as was the rest of the court. This was all the Chinese opera was almost an intrinsic part of court ritual in the late Qing dynasty. And this is in commemoration of her 70th birthday. So it really is her birthday show. And when you start examining the details, you realize that it's not just a casual outing on the water. This is actually a very heavily constructed, really almost a personal scrapbook of all the things that are important to her. Ling is actually dressed up as Whitesnake from the very famous Chinese play, The Legend of Whitesnake, which was, again, also intimately familiar to not only all of Chinese, but particularly to the Manchu court. And she herself, again, has this sign identifying her as Guan Yin. In one of the popular iterations of Whitesnake at this time, Guan Yin comes down and tells Whitesnake, who is this demon in woman's form, that she can become this immortal being through good acts and such like that. So it speaks to the power of Guan Yin's salvation.